Well, welcome everybody. We've got a good group, all keen to hear everyone's thoughts about our weekend in Geneva. So we are recording, and we will put this up on YouTube just so that anyone who's interested. Because one of the things I realized about the weekend in Geneva is everything that's written about it is written by journalists, and so you have all these journalists, right? Well, I'm paid to be here, and this is the time I had. So I wrote a blog post this week about our time there, which I put on the Discord and you can find on our website, and try to make it as comprehensive a guide as possible. So if any of you feel that I've left anything off, then please let me know. But yeah, I thought today we could just sort of talk about what we enjoyed about it and what if there's anything we didn't like, what we didn't like about it, and also of course the watches that we saw. So like I'll sort of start. Um, and then well, obviously you can ask any questions, and then I'll pass it on to a couple of others to sort of give their thoughts of the weekend. But I had an absolutely amazing time. I was a bit nervous going because I wasn't sure how difficult everything would be or how busy everything would be, and I wasn't sure how many watches we'd get to try on, how close you'd get, stuff like that. But everything was really straightforward. The city is, easy to get around, and the fact that the show's put on free transport is pretty amazing. And we got a lot of you got to see a lot of watches. So the time to watches show and at the Hotel Beau Rivage, like everybody's got all their stock to try on there, like pretty every brand pretty much. And then at the Expo at the big show, we were able to get the touch and feel sessions with some brands, which were great, and then we were able to find other brands that were able to see their watches as well. So that was great. But you do have to kind of organize that in advance as best you can, or come with us next year and we'll organize it for you. So the watches I liked the most, I think, were I was impressed with Leico, which I'd not seen before at the time to watches, and the brand that I don't actually know how to pronounce, BA111OD, with their cool watches. Very keen on those. And Behrens from China, which is non-Chinese name, but it's a Chinese watch brand. Their high horology was really incredible, differentiated design and very different movements. I know some of the other guys will talk about them as well. Um, and then up at Palexpo, yeah, broadly, I had just obviously seeing a lot of watches we did know, and then of the novelties we got to see up close. The JLCs were really cool. The Piaget stuff was amazing on their stand tour. We had a good time at Panerai. But the novelties that I got to see versus one of the other tables were a bit more straightforward, whereas I think the other guys saw some much more exciting stuff coming later in the year from Panerai, but still really excited to go to our event in a few weeks' time. And then the Bremont was quite interesting, which we can come back to. And we've got our Bremont event next week after, um, which is really exciting as well, because they're going to have the whole Terra Nova range there for us to look at in Mayfair. And then the Frederic Constant, actually, Adam and I went to Frederic Constant, looked through their range, and they've always been impressive with what they're trying to do and their price points, but they're bringing out some, well, even more impressive movements and some stuff in gold and semi-precious stones now, and they were fantastic. Like the white gold and malachite dial, um, which was a moon phase, date moon phase, and that I think they said that was under 20 grand. So very impressive sort of positioning there from Frederic Constant. And it was really good looking range of watches, really well sized. So yeah, I'll stop there. If anyone has any questions or thoughts on what I said, then please chime in.
I was slightly surprised. I thought it was a bit of a missed opportunity by so many of the brands to have the watches behind very thick glass cases that were difficult to photograph. Some of the brands sort of got it absolutely spot on, like Grand Seiko, good example, having a bunch of their watches out on those funny sort of wrist contraptions. So you could sort of try them on and take a wrist shot. I thought was really neat. And likewise, JLC, them being nailed down to cases, but actually, not behind glass made quite a big difference. You could sort of appreciate the quality. Whereas I think, the Rolex it was very hard to sort of get a grasp of what the fuss was all about. They were behind very thick glass with very bright light. It was quite difficult to work out what you were looking at. So I think some brands got it better, got it right, sort of quicker and in a fan friendly way versus others who didn't. But going in for those sort of touch and feel sessions made the big difference.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that was the sort of, I wouldn't want to go and not do that. And so either go with a group who can organize it for you, or get up really early in the morning, get there right at the start, and book a couple of the sessions yourself. Yeah.
Can I add here? I think this is quite an evolvement from last year, because I went last year, and I think it seems the brands are sort of still learning how to do the public side of the show. Because last year I tried on 2 watches for the whole day, and it was one micro brand, or one smaller brand, and one was Oris, and there was literally, you couldn't try almost anything on. And I think even the possibility of booking these sort of private viewings wasn't really there, or it was just like a small idea. And even though I recognize some people, for example, in Grand Seiko, but in the stand last year from the UK management, they just couldn't give me anything to try on. So it's actually hearing that you had so many watches on. Is a big evolvement and a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it was interesting going for the first time, because I've not been to Watches and Wonders. I've been to other things around it, like the other events, but never the main show. And having read reviews and as you said, Hamish, having read the journalist side of things, you'd be led to believe it was, a frustrating event sometimes, a boring event this year, nothing to show. So many people saying it was nothing particularly exciting. I couldn't disagree more. I mean, I maybe it's because it's new to me and I'm not jaded like a lot of the journalists are, but I felt really excited by it. I think it was really exciting, and I thought the whole thing was really well organized. Last year I gathered the security was a bit of a nightmare. This year we breezed through. There was loads of places to sit down and rest. Food and drink was quite pricey, but you'd expect that because we're in Switzerland and everything's pricey. But I thought the way it was laid out, the way it works, the way the brands interacted with real people rather than the watch press and the high rollers, I thought was really interesting. And as you say, we got to try lots of stuff on. I think it was I was really, after the event and having looked at other people and how they were approaching it, I was really pleased that we were there as a group and that we had the sessions organized. I think that made a big difference. Because doing the private touch and feel at JLC and Panerai and having the tour around Piaget stand, it just felt to me like that felt like a real luxury, and I'm really glad that we were able to do that. But overall, I thought the event was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. And, even as I said, we'll come on to Bremont later, but, I did almost a complete 180 on them as well, after being able to get hands on.
They definitely. Sorry, go on.
Well, I should say, the atmosphere was fantastic. Like, it was generally a really buzzy atmosphere until, maybe till right near the end of the day. And as you said, the staff were great. So, shout out to the staff, because they'd done the whole of the 4 days with the retailers, and then they get the onslaught of the general public. And many of them are sort of out of HQ, they're not used to being so people facing, and then obviously there's professionals who do events regularly, but all of them were good natured and enthusiastic and trying to help people learn more about their brands, which is the point of the show. And I agree, Rata, that there's a lot of evolution, and hopefully they'll learn even more for next year. And they've certainly got the resources, and they certainly put the resources into it.
I couldn't believe just how much money they have clearly all spent on a show at which no one can buy any watches. That sort of it was a real sort of window into the luxury Swiss watch industry. Just their love of glitz and glamour and storytelling. I mean, some of the JLC story in particular was remarkable. They had this forge in the middle of the this big open kind of boutique they'd set up. So they probably had, 40 or 50 watches out on show, maybe more, around this gigantic sort of fake boulder that every 10 minutes spewed a bunch of fire into the air. Just absolutely fascinating. You know, the Ulysses Nardin still another great example. They only had 4 watches in the stand, and then they built a giant replica of the movement of the Freak watch, which is the one where the movement tracks the time for you. It does the hour's hand, but it was upside down, so you had to look at it on a mirror on the floor, and they'd stuck it to the ceiling. It was just bonkers and really great fun. Had a great time.
Yeah, I mean, I can echo everything that everybody said. Adam, I thought it was fantastic. I loved it. It was my first experience at really going to anything like it. I've been to watch events that sometimes happen in like the Sheraton in Heathrow for vintage watches. And I even found that difficult, really, to get a construct without being overwhelmed by everything, which was really fantastic about doing it with you guys. I thought now having those events organized really helped put some structure to what I was seeing. And it took a bit of the sting out of the sort of fear of it for me too, I have to say. I get a bit anxious about whether I'm worthy enough in such exalted place like that. And it was lovely sharing that with you. It made it accessible to me. And like the people were fantastic. The people that showed us at JLC, the girl was absolutely amazing. I thought in explaining things, and the watches, like you said, Ed, being able to touch some of them was really nice. You could actually wind them and see the shooting star go across the face of the watch. It's fantastic. I really enjoyed that. And I loved the smaller brands that were there as well. Some of them that you don't really see a lot of or hear about as much of. I thought that was really nice. And as well. So I really enjoyed Patek Philippe's museum when we did the visit there. I thought that was a real highlight for me. I love sort of horology in general as much as watches, and it really gave a flavour of the art of time making timepieces. And what a fantastic, better than the Science Museum by a long chalk. I thought their collection, but yeah, it was wonderful. I thought it was really well organized. I thought you guys did it. Thought the places we ate were fantastic. I really enjoyed that as well. They were perfectly.
It was quite nice to have a sort of, end of the day debrief where you sort of people could go and chill out for a couple of hours and then reflect
and share that experience to some degree. I think
it's quite a sort of overwhelming experience. Different city where predominantly people speak French first, and then everybody's there just looking at like small mechanical objects that you can't see very well from very far away that you're probably never going to be able to buy. And everyone was there were so many kind of nice people there, which that was a big surprise to me. And actually, Hamish, Kent, and I on the Sunday lunchtime-ish, we just wandered into the Chopard stand and just thought we'd try our luck. And they did a little touch and feel session for us of just a couple of pieces, and it was remarkable, actually. Just really, really nice to be able to. I think partly they probably had a bit of confidence in us being a group and wearing matching fleeces and. Clearly we were knowledgeable in asking sort of pointed questions, but they just proffered up would you like to go and try this on? That was the sort of, for me, the biggest bit of, being taken behind the velvet rope, which was, that was fun.
They definitely they were definitely selling watches there. I guess it was wonderful when Adam, we were in Panerai together at the table, and there was a watch you particularly liked. It was a beautiful, what the beautiful Panerai it was, and they were keen to sign you up there and then.
Oh God, yeah.
And I could see in other sites they'd only taken someone to one side and they were sort of giving it rock all to sell the watches. So which I didn't realize there was any opportunity of that either there. And I think probably maybe not in all the brands, but definitely some of the brands you could make a reservation for a piece.
Yeah, it was Panerai, Grand Seiko were, Oris were. There's a few, but then the others that Rolex will have sold a load of their watches to their high-end collectors on the press days, and likewise Patek I think was only open for their customers.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know that the VIP clients who go in the week can purchase, but I think what I put in the blog post was actually it was quite clear that you could reserve watches, especially if when you were on the stand you could find a representative from your country. Then, because we were at JLC with Ali, of course, who's from the Harrods boutique, and he could have reserved anything for you via text message. So you could pick it up before he got home in a lot of senses. So I think that's also worth remembering if you're particularly taken but of course, if the watches are not yet available at retail, it's a bit more tricky, which was what the watch I think Adam was interested in. It would have been a future reservation.
I think we need to say congratulations to Hamish. I did see that there was a 5-second spot on the Watch and Wonders official counting. I was surprised because I turned it on because they talked about what went on. I think it was day 5 or day 6, and bang, there you were. Congratulations. Coming back to the other point, I spent a little bit of time with Zenith. And they were wonderful. I walked in, I think part of it was that I had pulled my pocket watch out, which was sold as their pocket watch on display. And all of a sudden, bang, they gave me a special tour, individual tour, and tried on anything I wanted. So I think if you befriend them, I don't know if that's the correct word or not, or show them that you're serious about watches, most of the vendors or organizations are really very happy to let you try on what they have. Unless it's 330,000 euro like the new Grand Seiko.
I think that's right, actually. But it felt like lots of the brands took their sort of really passionate staff. Sometimes you can be in a boutique and you talk to a salesperson rather than a watch person, and it felt like every single person there was a watch person. I mean, we went to we did a quiz just before our tour at Bell & Ross, and we met Erling, who we'll see in a few weeks at the boutique. He's the London boutique manager, and my God, was he passionate about Bell & Ross! Like, absolutely love them. And there was no sort of like sales patter. It was just here are all these great watches that I love, and you should probably love them too. But it doesn't matter if you don't. It was just a really nice experience with someone that, just like you say, Kent, was interested and could see that we were interested.
So I couldn't make obviously this year, unfortunately, but I was following along at home on YouTube and Instagram and all the rest of it. And just want to circle back to something that Adam said, actually. Yeah, it was amazing how so many kind of commentators judged the show on what 3 brands were doing, saying it was like a filler year and not much is happening. I was thinking, well, hold on a second, there's another however many brands there are, not excluding the newly labeled, which I think is brilliant, way the Pirates outside, which I think is fantastic. They've got to run with that somehow. Imagine a big ship in the bay. It's brilliant. And then we've got some more commentary through the Scottish Watches podcast. Was really good. It was really positive. Dave and Ricky did a great job with that. I don't even think they mentioned the big thing. They mentioned Tudor. They didn't mention, who I'm talking about. They didn't mention them. And obviously your photos and stuff were good. So yeah, just disappointed with certain outlets that just dismissed the whole thing when there wasn't a Rolex Coke.
Completely. I mean, like Hamish said, I mean, just going along to Frederic Constant shows you that if you dig a bit deeper, there's really interesting stuff to be discovered. And I was really taken by what I saw at Baume Mercier, and I mean, the Piaget stuff was phenomenal, absolutely amazing. So I just think people are just jaded, and completely agree with what you said there, David. I was blown away. But maybe we're just not as jaded as they are.
Yeah, I think it's worth addressing, not because it's part of industry, how the industry works that people don't appreciate. So, Watches and Wonders, the show, pays a very large number of journalists to go there, as in they pay for their hotel, and while they're on site, all the food and drink is included before the public days. And this is very unusual. So other industries don't do this. Like the car show does not pay the journalists to go to the car show, and the machinery show does not pay the journalists to go to the machinery show. So this is an artifact of the old Baselworld show and traditions of the industry, and it's as simple as that. And now that the journalism world has spread much wider, and there's all these bloggers and influencers, it's actually pretty hard to know who to invite. So they actually invite a lot of people, and what that means is that the journalists invited then feel obliged to kind of see everybody. I mean, not all of them, obviously, and nor can they, because you can't get around 55 brands in 4 days with any degree of sanity left. But I think that's part of where it comes from as well, is that the journalists feel, lucky to be there, but it's their job to be there, but then obliged to sort of charge around at 1,000,000 miles an hour and cover as much as possible. And then do with the content what they will, depending on their slant, their publication, or their editorial. But I think for them it's sort of a very stressful experience. And what is new is this public idea, and what we're trying to do, which is, well, we're watch enthusiasts, so sure, we should go to the biggest watch show in the world. It just makes sense. But to the industry, both sides of it, the brands, the show organizers, and the journalists, that's a bit new. That's a bit of a new concept. They're used to it being a really stressful, really busy, really tiring week, seeing, yes, many things they've seen before, and hearing maybe some stories and PR pictures they've heard many times before as well. Whereas we're there and we're like, whoa, that's a bit crazy. Why have they done that? What an amazing thing to build. Like, what's going on here? And so I think that's what we really enjoyed about it, is we are there just like, gosh, like, look at this place. This is crazy. Like, and it is crazy, on the face of it, like, to build what they build, and do what they do, because a lot, the money in the upper parts of the industry is amazing. They're very, very large sums indeed, and they pay for this sort of thing. So it's it's I have sympathy with the journalists, but if you just read the journalists, I think you don't really get a full picture of what's going on, and nor do the journalists, because again, this is where the pirates comment comes from. So for those who aren't too sure, he said it for two different reasons. So the first reason is, as I understand it, it's a veiled dig at Swatch, because the CEO of Swatch, Nicholas Hayek, thinks of himself as a pirate, which is slightly odd, but there you go. And so it was a dig at Swatch Group not joining the show, because the Rolex CEO went personally to invite them to come this year, and they said no, and he wanted that to be made public in his interview, which he did. So whatever's going on there, it's unfortunate for everyone, because the show would be undoubtedly better if the Swatch Group brands were involved. And then he did specifically refer to the other brands who put on shows elsewhere in the city at the same time, or attend shows, or showcase their wares, and hope to get coverage by the journalists that Watches and Wonders have paid to come to Switzerland. So that's where the sort of pirate thing directed at the other brands comes from. And a lot of the other brands were not happy with that labeling. And so I agree with you, David, that it's quite amusing if, in one sense, it's amusing if they then take the mantle on and are sort of proud of it for a year or two. But in another sense, it's ridiculous, because the industry should all be on the same side for this kind of thing, and be encouraging every journalist and every retailer and every enthusiast to come to town and see what there is to show, whether you're Rolex or anyone else. So that's just a bit of context for those who hadn't.
I think they should get together, get the Pirates mantra, and roll with that, because I think it's brilliant when you've got the big corporates inside and you've got the little guys, the pirates, from the outside. I just think it could be really working. And then they get the pirate limited editions, of course, for the show. And it's endless. It's just another question, actually. Your pictures look great, and I was surprised. I haven't been to a watch show this big. I've been to a few little watch shows, but I've been to car shows. And you go after the press week, you go to the public days, and everything looks just a little bit knackered, and the staff are tired and grumpy. Whereas your pictures look great, and the other ones I see again, the place looked kind of spick and span. Was that the vibe for you guys?
It was unbelievable. Firstly, they must have spent like genuinely unbelievable sums of money on decking it out. So they build.
It looked like it. It looked like it. It looks amazing. Yeah.
It's generally jaw-dropping because they build like everything you see is just fabricated within the conference center. So the conference center is just like a giant aircraft hangar. So everything you see is totally fake, and
I'll just get the picture of the behind the scenes up. Hang on, carry on, Ed, and I'll do a quick screen share.
Yeah, and it's I mean they had a lot of cleaning staff being very, very meticulous. It's also Switzerland, so people are very polite, and rubbish goes in bins or is sorted out, and everything kind of works. It's very effective. A few of the stands rotated staff. So JLC had a bit of a staff rotation for the weekend because they were right near the front door. They had a big stand with a lot of people going through it. Some of the other stands whose staff had been there all week, they clearly looked like they'd been there all week. And what you don't get to see as a regular punter is they do the sort of Tuesday to Friday is the press stuff, but the press stuff is not only a mad rush, as Hamish said, to get watches onto people's wrists in these very short slots, and with lots of very angry, disgruntled journalists who have had to schlep to the other side of the world for a week of not really being able to play with the watches that they need to write about. And then they all host these ridiculous parties in the evenings. So they give their staff literally no time off from 7 a.m. till like 1 a.m. But yeah, I mean, the staff were fantastic, and everything was nice and easy. Everything worked. The food was, like Adam said, expensive, but pretty good, actually. And there was definitely you could tell which brands took it kind of really, really seriously and spent a lot of money. So Cartier made the Cartier stand feel like a Cartier boutique. It was phenomenal. Piaget just did something totally different, like very 1950s, beautiful blue, I don't know how to describe it, cinema kind of effect. Whereas some of the other brands spent a bit less, like Grand Seiko had quite a simple, a very nice stand, but quite a simple stand.
Mm-hmm. So I'll just share my screen and show what we're talking about. So this is can you see that? Does that work? Huh? Yep. So this is the show, the big show. So basically they recreated this sort of luxury shopping mall, and it was all this size. So all of the corridors were this size, and they had all these tables and chairs and sofas in the middle. This is actually a cafe in the middle here, and that's the whole of that right hand side is Cartier and more. And Cartier had another space opposite for more meeting rooms. And then you went in there. I mean, there's no queue at this stage, but some of them times you had to wait a bit to get in, stop overcrowding. And you went in there, and then they had all the watches and some jewelry on display, and it was all very beautiful. And the way they did it is this. So it's all steel frame, and then wooden frame, and then material tacked onto it. So this is, you could see this when you went to the Louvre, and you can see the ceiling of the main conference center, this huge hangar type space above it. So they literally built the whole thing inside the thing, and then the brands built their stands in their spot. So absolutely awesome what they did.
They carpeted the whole thing as well.
Oh yeah, they carpeted the whole
thing. So I wonder if it'll be the only time that we ever see a carpeted exhibition centre. But it was absolutely dropping.
I think it's good to mention as well that some of these structures are like 2, 3 floors. You know, like it's like basically working buildings. You know, and some of the brands bringing like a lot of water elements there as well. This year was IWC. Actually, at IWC, I think need to shout out here as well,
Yeah.
because what they do with their stands is they have huge space. They had huge space last year, and there is a lot of thought, a lot of innovation going to the booth every year, it seems.
Yeah, I'd be
Had
really
a
interested.
giant moon, didn't they? A giant moon in there, in
Upside
there,
down moon in the middle.
upside down moon. It was incredible, but it did make me think that the amount of money it cost to build that pales into insignificance in comparison to the amount of money that was in that building. My God, I've never been anywhere in my life. I've been places where it's Fort Knox type money. It's extraordinary. Just the value of the watches, but the value of the watches on the people that were walking around the place, let alone the value of the watches there. So it is an investment for something. It's tuppence, I would think, compared to what the value is there. They should be carpeting that bloody hallway with the sort of markups that they make on those watches and the value that people put on it. It's the least. It was really nice, though, Ed. You said last year, and Václav, you might know better too, that there wasn't as much seating because some of the accessibility, I thought, fell down a little bit. If I had any criticism, there was plenty of seating, which made it fantastic. But when I have a bit of a mobility problem, and thinking about using a wheelchair there, I gave it up, the idea entirely. I think I saw one or two other people. If you're in it, and everything is, you've got to stand up and look at it, and everything is geared for that. And I think, in the world that we live in, there needs to be some thought by the organization around accessibility for people. You mentioned about taking pictures. The lighting in those boxes meant that it strobed on the cameras, which almost inhibits taking any picture at all. And they come out in a different way to, certainly when you're using sort of digital type cameras. And the amount of people that were there that were blogging, you could see with their holding the cameras with their phones and the lights and things. It must have been a YouTuber's delight, I would think. Yeah, I think the accessibility was the only thing that I thought.
Yeah, I'll just share my screen and hopefully it'll play the video again, because this again, just so that people who haven't seen much get a conception of what we're talking about. And this will show what Waldo means as well, because they have rather straightforwardly put all of the watches at a height to be viewed from everybody walking. So hopefully this will play now. So it's short. I'll just play it again, but that's obviously sort of one of the big halls, and we're standing at the Rolex store stand, which you can see is enormous, and we're looking across at Chanel, Chopard, and Patek Philippe. So I'll just play again, and then I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually, because the Rolex watches were probably the lowest down, and you can see for reference they're kind of mid-chest height. And a few of the stands were kind of quite easily accessible in that they had sort of ramps and no stairs, but others not even slightly. So IWC, for example, had 3 flights of stairs to get into it, and there were
IWC had a ramp because we had a pram, and they took us around the back, and we used the ramp.
Oh, good.
So you could get in, but you had to speak to security.
Yeah. No, fair enough. That's good.
So you took your family, Marius. So give us the review of taking along the whole family.
Well, I could only say that Oris had the only kids kind of friendly display, because they had the big bear and they were giving tattoos and crayons, and it was really fun for the little one. Actually, we went like 5 times to Oris.
Oris
But yeah,
always seemed to win
Oris is one of my
stand.
favorite brands. I love Oris.
My daughter still has the tattoo here. She doesn't want to wash.
I think they're amazing. I love Oris.
But yeah, there are a lot of brands that you had only steps, so it was hard to kind of push the prem around. also changing area for the kid was in open space. So everybody walking by could look at you changing your baby if you had a baby. Luckily, I was slightly bigger, but if you had a, a 1-year-old or 2-year-old and you had to change the baby, it would be quite cringe. It would be quite an open space. So yeah, there was some, some misses here and there, but I think overall it's quite impressive. I think the whole thing is they built the whole shopping mall just for, for a week, basically.
You should feed that back to them. You should feed that back to them, Marius. Let them know that.
Yes.
Because if enough people do, they will change. They will change it. Because
yes.
I have little ones myself, and been in events that no baby changing in the men's toilets and stuff like that. It still happens.
No, so, this was an open space, so this one was
right. Yes, that's just not good enough.
Everybody going to the toilet would have watched you change your baby.
Yeah. That's just no good.
You can see how the show is sort of learning to be, open to the public and what it actually means by being open to the public, because it's just not about having the 5 days of mobile, well-dressed, and capable journalists going around watch stands. It's actually the all public with all its like small children up to any type of age range and mobility issues or not, so they'll definitely be working on it. And I think maybe the show itself opening to the public like this may actually sway Swatch Group to come back, because it's now giving more of an added value. It's not just the meeting of the ADs anymore, and it creates a lot of other buzz, and so maybe in the future we might see that it's still going to be probably a huge expense for all these brands, to be joining that space, and that there was their sort of main point when they left these big shows, because they can spend the budget elsewhere much better. But if there are now cross connections with the end consumer, that just might give this way to coming back.
Yeah, and just
in terms of room. Oh, sorry, Hamish. In terms of room, like actual room, is there room for the Swatch Group? Because the place looked. I mean, it didn't seem to be a.
There's lots more halls.
Right.
They could fit another 100 brands.
Oh wow!
I think there's enough.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, they've used 2 of the main halls of Pal Expo, and I think there's 6.
Yeah.
Oh, so yes, then.
Just to add context to what Vrata was saying, so this year the numbers were released by Watches and Wonders. So it was about 30,000 people in the week. So that's mostly retailers, and probably about 1,000 journalists. So that just shows that every watch retailer in the world kind of does go. And they were very proud to have, I think, 1,800, different showcases and things for the retailers and journalists in groups. And then the tickets for the weekend were 19,000 across the 2 days. And I didn't know this because they didn't publicize it, but they gave a lot away to certain groups of young people in Switzerland, which weren't obvious when we were there. But they said they were giving them to certain constituencies to encourage for people interested in the industry. And Ed and I, very fortunately, bumped into Joanna Langer, who some of you will remember did an event with us last October that was fantastic. And she's a full-time trainer for the FHH, and she trains retail staff mostly. And she's excellent. And we bumped into her just as we were leaving on the Sunday, as she was waiting to start another tour. And she was doing 4 tours a day in English and German for different constituencies, both in the week and on the weekend. And I think obviously she was pretty tired, but she'd had quite a good time. And she said that she'd got lots of people interested in getting into the industry. So that's another aspect to the show where if it's just retailers and ADs they've been inviting for the last 50 years, and now they have this other option, then it helps in that sense as well. It really helps people who are interested in the different parts of the industry come and learn about it. And to Rata's point, getting more brands in the one place on the luxury side is probably quite important, because we haven't got much time left. It's already nearly 8:45. But we should just mention the other shows. So Time to Watch is what you might think of a more traditional type show. It's much more straightforward, featuring still a huge variety of brands, but much smaller stands, more like any other kind of conference one might have been to. But almost all of them have watches to try on, and they're all, have the founders there and the designers there. So it's just as fun to go to. It's just a completely different scale. And then there's the Hotel Beau Rivage, which was a very strange experience. Would anyone else like to explain what Hotel Beau Rivage was like?
It was like going into a bit like an arms bazaar. So there were sort of big organized brands. So those brands had the private rooms. So
Suites upstairs.
Yeah, they sort of had a suite. So we went and had a long session with the founder of Sartori Biard, which we'll do a long post on later in the week. Absolutely astonishing brand and watches. And then they have another couple of rooms where they've got sort of 20 small brands packed in with like trestle tables and banners around the outside. And then in all the various lobbies of the restaurants are all these like very, very small brands who literally just turn up with a suitcase full of watches and hold appointments like on the sofas. And so you walk in, there's a security on the front door, but it's non-ticketed. So you walk through and there's just this hive of activity of maps showing you where the different brands are, people sort of beckoning you over to have a coffee and look at some crazy watch in a suitcase. It sort of feels, on the one hand, really good fun, and on the other hand, a little bit seedy. It was great. But it feels very sort of like Riviera glitzy. So the Hotel Beau Rivage is stunning. It's on the banks of Lake Geneva, right near the center of town. And it was a beautiful sunny day and lots of nice restaurants around the outside. It's a really nice place to go. I think we'll see a few of our sort of a few of the British brands that we work with quite a bit end up there next year rather than
Ed, I was going to say, what brands were operating inside there, interestingly?
So they had at the high end, De Bethune were there. I think was Jean there as well?
No.
No.
Jean were just at their headquarters.
Okay. And then they had brands like Nevada Grenchen, Atelier Wen were there.
Fulamari.
Yep. Fulamari were there.
Oh, so good stuff. I mean,
it's basically the smaller independents that have got a bit more money. So there's some cracking. A great example is the main retailer that we saw there was the limited edition, who a dealer in the UK of like limited edition independent watches. So it was the kind of watches they sell, but at a really broad range of prices. So, and everything from, I think the cheapest would have been Nevada Grenchen at 500 or 600 quid, all the way up to De Bethune at $1 million. And
one independent brand, a guy who owns an independent brand, who we probably might all know. Not that one that you might be thinking. And he said that he did £300,000 worth of business just sitting in the bar and selling and talking to people. So it's obviously a place where people go and congregate at that level. It's quite a serious thing for them to do. And he wasn't even an official exhibitor. He was a pirate, boat pirate.
I'll share my screen again because I've got a great picture of the hotel, and because they put these banners up, it kind of looks like it's going to be what it is when you get inside. So that's some of the other brands we haven't mentioned because they were all upstairs and we didn't have time to go upstairs. So if I go back next year, when we go back next year, I'm probably going to go to there for a whole day, to do the networking on behalf of the club as much as anything else. But obviously, if people want appointments there, we can work it out because this is all individually booked with the hotel and isn't ticketed or anything. There is no list of the brands that are in this building anywhere, and there hasn't even been a list produced post show, which is fairly farcical. So next year I will endeavour to make said list.
I'll tell you the other place that you can go to any time of the year and see was at the airport. They have the most amazing selection of across brands of watches, where you can try them on. I thought that was really. Maybe it's a bit
Yeah,
left
so
field.
like there's a lot of brands, a lot of watches, but the thing is, most of the watches you can actually get to see in many places. But the thing is, I really thought that. Sorry for sounding a bit frustrated, but the thing is, it's like other shows, like car shows and other tech shows, they do exhibit some of their experimental stuff.
Mm.
It's a very, very, very lack of this. It's like whatever you can't get. It's like, come on, Rolex. I didn't even go to Rolex as teaser, also because I hate them. But I mean, you don't get to see novelties. I mean, sure, gyro tourbillon in JLC, but well, you can visit a decent boutique and get those things. Can see those things, but it's like something like Audemars Piguet does. It's like HYT's does. It's like very a lot of the different things is being done by De Bethune as well. I didn't go to their store, obviously, the other part. But did they have any novelty items like experimental stuff they do?
No, we didn't go there. And actually, you're right. There were, because it's sort of still predominantly a trade show, then they are just showing the core ranges. So Rolex had every single watch they make, which is like 150 different watches. But the only ones, there weren't many brands that took the really, the stuff that should be at an exhibit that you're not going to get to see otherwise. Cartier had a few bits and pieces from their Privé collection.
The jewelers did.
And all the
That's not
jewelers.
what you're referring to, Devs. I mean, I hear what you're saying. But it's just not that. I mean, bear in mind the public have only been let in 2 years.
Yeah, no, the public is fine, but the thing is, I actually also mentioned this because you mentioned that there are a lot of people are interested in getting into this watchmaking. So
Yeah.
not the business part, but it's like being a watchmaker. So if they don't get to see what are the technologies behind these things, how do we make these things? So how do we think, or not we, well, the watchmakers, with the building blocks of these things? I don't see how you can actually just show a very nice shiny object. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and it was interesting you say that, because actually I think this was supposed to be the first year where they had a separate room to sort of entice people into watchmaking as a career. And that was quite interesting. We spent a bit of time there on the last day. So they had Horace again were showing how they made the laser printed dial.
Yeah.
There were a few sort of movement manufacturers that were encouraging people to apply for apprenticeships. But yeah, I mean, the brands, I take your point that the brands weren't really sort of showing off what they can do in the way that you would need to do, maybe to inspire people into.
Well, maybe I'm thinking about one particular pocket watch that Vacheron was showcasing.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And that's actually, that falls into this category because it's obviously the most complicated pocket watch in the world, commissioned by American collector. But it's something they didn't have to show, and they brought it and they were showcasing that, and I'm quite envious of you because you got to see that, and it's one of the things that they're gonna showcase it for a week and then no one's ever gonna see it ever again.
There's always seems to be that best in class, doesn't there? And that was the best in class. I think years previous you had the Cartier with the movement or in the rotor. And I don't know if the brands get together because you wouldn't want to show up with the most advanced complication ever the same year that Cartier do the complication in the rotor. There's got to be they've got to pass the baton, haven't they? Okay, this is your year. This is your year.
They don't. There's very little of the one-upmanship. We had the time in Piaget, and they had this ridiculously thin tourbillon, the Altiplano tourbillon, and it's really odd to see it because when it turns around, it kind of disappears. And then it's only when it gets to sort of that angle that it suddenly looks like a circular watch again. It's remarkable. And Benoit, who was from the Swiss team at Piaget, was sort of explaining, we don't try and do this. This is just who we are. This sort of whole, we're not having a contest. And then on the other side, Vacheron smash out a ridiculous pocket watch that's about this big and weighs 10 kilos and cost $20 million to make. And
I don't really think it counts as a watch, but that's probably very controversial because it weighs 2 kilos.
Yep.
The movement weighs 2 kilos, I think, and it's really, really quite big, like easily the size of a clock.
Be a gym watch.
One of the things I found really disappointing, and that was Panerai, is they show a watch, but they say, oh, well, you can't take photos of it because it's not for sale yet. I found that very bizarre that, you know, maybe 2 weeks later, they're going to put it for sale, but they wouldn't let us take pictures.
Yeah, that was funny because I think we got an entire case. So they gave you some free watches in the case, and we just so happened to get an entire case of unreleased watches.
Yeah,
So
maybe that was the,
I was like,
that was the situation, but it seemed like if they had it there and they were showing it to the press, they should let the consumers look at it and take pictures too, but they didn't.
Well, and the Mille Miglia we saw at Chopard was still embargoed, but the only difference was the colors.
Yeah.
Again, the reason that happens is because marketing teams want launchers to go in a very particular way, and yet they need to show the watches to the buyers when they can. So
a great example of that being Bremont's disastrous launch of their new watches, because whatever they did for their launch, they somehow managed to get almost everybody to hate the watch before they tried it on, and then almost every person that tried it on, well, it seems to be everybody that we know that's tried them on has actually quite liked them. So it's like to Kent's point, it's like they do it the wrong way around. You get them on people's wrists, have some photographs on wrists. People can then equate it to a real thing that they might buy, and go from there, rather than these ridiculous over-rendered, overhyped releases that no one really cares about that much. You know, people will go and see it and buy it, or they won't.
Seems like
I'm a sucker for a rendition. I'm a sucker for a rendition, I have to say.
It's almost like the hype when they have an IPO. They hype it so much so they can push the prices up. And I'm saying, well, is that the model they're working on or not?
Yep.
Well, I have some sympathy. Like the marketing team's job is to stand out. So, you know, there's a lot of watches there. You know, the Bremont launch, you know, again, we can discuss it.
They did stand out. They did stand out, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of negative press around them, but I think that's also, in a way, could be positive.
Yeah, and
because everybody was talking about them in a way.
We say about all watches. I mean, the funniest comment I saw on one of the Bremont Facebook groups was, why isn't there more press attention when apparently the fans are so angry? And I was very close to writing back, because Bremont will have actually pulled the paid press coverage. So, like, Bremont might have lined up a load of press coverage for the week and then decided not to pay to have it run in all these watch magazines because they were slightly disappointed with the reaction. We just don't know, but I wasn't going to get into that on Facebook. But you know, all the press coverage we see following the week, a lot of it is paid for, and I think people don't really understand that as well. So the watches that Hodinkee chose to focus on from being there are the ones they're paid to focus on.
So that raises the question, is everybody paid for it? Because if you look at the blogs and different magazines and the reviews, sometimes they're quite different. Some people are very neutral, some people, and you know, it's kind of strange, because I would think if their way was being paid, they may be a little bit more easy or a little bit more accommodating to a particular brand or a group of brands. Well, as I said, when I said earlier that many journalists are paid to be there, they're paid by the show. Right. So the show as a whole
pays for their accommodation and in some cases their flights, and then when they're there, the food and drink are all free.
What
Brands,
about things like watch time, magazines, periodicals, things? Are they
Yes.
also paid, or does their publisher pay for that?
no,
Or
they're all paid to attend. Yeah, all those people. And then when it comes to publishing, what they choose to focus on, some of what they publish in every single one of these media organizations, some of it will be paid to appear in that week, and other things will just be their opinion. Oh, I like this, I like that, I saw this, I saw that.
Hmm.
So
Plus, you have the sort of the slightly awkward grey area of we haven't paid you, but we have flown you to Switzerland for a week on
Right.
expenses paid. Not that. I'm thinking like when who is it? Is it Hamilton did a launch and flew everybody to Canada and took them out on a skiing holiday. So that's not paid. They haven't paid for you to cover them, but they've made your life very comfortable. So I think there's also that slightly grey area of you might have but we could have a whole hour on this topic, I'm sure.
Yeah, also, I mean, certain publications are also an online watch reseller
yes,
Yes.
of certain brands.
yes, that's
I
right.
wonder who I'm talking about. But
Well, many of them are. Many of them are.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, and
yeah.
they might not want to upset the man that's supplying them the watches, which is making them a little bit of buns.
So all we can ask for is that the journalists try and be clear when it's, a total opinion piece. And mostly they are. They're like, well, I'm journalist such and such, and these were my highlights of the show. And that's the kind of the best sign we get, that piece has not got anything paid to be there. So just for the last, well, we're at an hour and we like to keep these short, but we haven't actually talked about any timepieces really. So I said a few that I liked, and just maybe a few people who were there, anything really stood out to you, would be great to hear about.
Lauren Fair,
Oh, really?
the one they released. This is,
Calendar.
yeah, 72K. Not quite yet. So yeah, not thinking about it right now, but it's so nice.
You're
So you
lying.
didn't like the Tourbillon Grand Sport from them.
Not
I
the
love that one.
beyond.
So
Okay,
it
yeah.
had kind of an orangey dial, but it's probably in the 200s. I don't know how much it is.
Okay, yeah.
I quite
No,
like that one. But
I'm
it's
actually
super
talking about
expensive.
the perpetual calendar there with the Aventurine moon phase. So that one, yeah.
Benjamin said the Zenith Defy Divers, which I think it's going to be a sleeper hit. They look fantastic. I was really impressed with them. A really lovely sort of modern version of a very 70s design. Yeah, that's cool. I've ordered a watch that I saw there. So the new the 150th anniversary of the Piaget Polo S, so the sports one.
Oh wow!
So
Wow.
if I
Nice
like it
one.
on this Saturday, then I'll send you.
Are you going to go and see it tomorrow before the event? Have you got time?
No, I'm going to go. Eric has saved me one, and I'm seeing him on Saturday to get it.
Nice.
Any
Ed,
dates
did you
for
try
next
that?
year?
Oh,
I'm
Not yet.
sorry. Any
No, good.
dates for next year?
No, I asked them, and they said they haven't finalized them yet, which is false.
Which-
But what they mean is that they're not willing to tell anyone yet because they're busy booking all the things they need to book. But
Ed, did you try on the that new tag glass box?
No,
Panda doll.
but big fan of the new sort of steel one.
Oh,
That's
me
great.
too.
Yeah,
Me
big.
too. That's delicious.
we're returning to tag Oxford Street in July. You'll be glad to know, David. And hopefully they'll be as generous with the champagne as they were last summer. And
Adam's just listed every watch he's seen in the chat as his favorite.
yeah, Adam had a good show. Yeah, I mean, it really was. The thing is, why did we go? We went to see watches, and we did see a lot of great watches. And I think that's probably where we should end it. I hope, I'm very thankful for all the feedback you've given us saying how much you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed putting it together. I started this club because this is the kind of thing I want to do. And so it's making me, and, I can speak for himself, but it makes me very happy that we're having these great times together. as watch enthusiasts, and we'll keep finding new ones to do, and each time we go back, obviously try and make it a little bit better. And we know it's that particular weekend will forever remain an expensive weekend. There's nothing we can do about that unless they move it to somewhere very different to Geneva. So, but I think we'd all
like
agree.
like Swindon or something.
Well, exactly. So, I mean, even
Awesome
cheaper-
job, Hamish. It was really nice, and Ed, you as well. So yeah, thanks for hosting and everything.
It was so much fun. Yeah, really great fun.
Yeah. So with that, we'll wrap up, and thanks all for joining us this evening. It's been a fun discussion to relive it. We have a lot of events in the calendar, starting with Breguet tomorrow and many more to come. So hope to see you all soon at one of those, and we'll have a chat online in May, and then June's online event is actually with a watch designer, so that's going to be really fun as well. So look out for that. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, guys. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye, all. Good to see you.
Bye bye.
Yeah.